Hi, this is Deb Falzoy with the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, and today I want to talk about how to talk with your state legislators about the Dignity at Work Act. We're going to go through what the lobbying process looks like and try to just sort of simplify it for you and demystify it for you so it's less intimidating. So we're going to start off with the why. So, why lobby our state legislators? In a nutshell, state legislators, especially leadership in the state house, have the ultimate power to pass legislation. It is our responsibility to both educate them on the problem of workplace bullying and our recommended solution, which is the Dignity at Work Act, and ask them for their support or at least not opposition, and to create urgency on the issue so workers can feel safe at work. We want to chip away at changing the attitudes towards this of state legislators, or at a minimum, putting this issue on their radars and creating urgency around it. So we mentioned state legislators, but let's get a little bit more specific into the who here. So we're either going to reach out to our own legislators because they care about our votes and they want to get reelected, or committee members who held a hearing for the Dignity at Work Act in your state. And as of the time of this recording, there are only 2 states with active bills. So I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have an active Dignity at Work Act in your state, because you can still take action, and we still need you to take action. It will be a separate discussion about how to introduce the bill in your state in the first place. If you are interested in that, we would love to get you involved. You can email us at info@dignityattworkact.org. So here's what to know about your state legislators, and this comes from the organization in my state, Massachusetts, called Progressive Mass. So you want to remind yourself that your legislators represent you and should hear from you. Like they're getting paid to represent you and the other people in your community. Also know that they're just human beings, just like you. They are humans. They can have human discussions with you. They aren't experts on everything, and you don't need to be either. You can follow up on anything that you don't know during this discussion that you have with them. You are the best qualified person to talk about what matters to you. So you can put in front of a state legislator or their staffer, which can be equally as useful because they put information in front of the legislators. Um, and you can decide what's a priority. I'm also noting here that just 3 to 5 people calling and emailing is enough to get an issue on state legislators' radar. You don't need 100 people in your district to reach out to your state legislator. All you need is like maybe a couple neighbors, maybe a couple family members, maybe a couple friends in the area. You don't need a lot. And you can also find common ground at first if you have a legislator whose political views are completely different from yours generally. There may be something that you can find common ground on, and open up the conversation with that first. Maybe thank you for supporting this bill on transparency, or whatever the issue is. Maybe it's not a political issue. Maybe it's just for an effort that they had in your district. You always want to be polite but assertive. So now let's talk about what works. So I'm going to put these in an order for you of least effective to most effective. And then I'm going to actually, while I'm doing this, show you what these efforts look like. So the level of effort that you put into lobbying your legislators matters. If there's a bill number in your state, here's what you can do in increasing effectiveness and disruptiveness. So, taking it from least effective to most effective, there is a huge difference between taking 20 seconds and sending your legislator a template letter and getting a group of people to meet with them at the state house or over Zoom and actually have a conversation. Those 2 actions express very different levels of commitment to the issue and how important it is to you. So we're going to start off with the least effective. And it's not to say that this isn't effective. It's just to say that this is the baseline of what you can do. Um, we have a template letter, and I'm going to show you what this looks like on our website. If you go to dignityatworkact.org, here's our website. You can scroll down to the bottom here, you will see a map of all of the states in the country where we are starting efforts to introduce the Dignity at Work Act. It's a relatively brand new bill. It's about a year and a half old. Um, and in legislation terms, that's only given us about 2 sessions to try to introduce this. And in the first session, it was really brand new. So we'll call it 1. So if you look at this map here, there's a grid down here that says where the active bills are and where we're developing state teams. Some states have 2-year legislative sessions, others have 1. It's a kind of about 50-50. I'd say that if we were a more heavily populated state like California, New York, you probably have a 2-year session. If you're a smaller state, more rural, less populated, you likely have a 1-year session. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but that's generally how it works. If we look at the orange states, that's Massachusetts and Rhode Island, where we have active bills. You can click on the state and you can see the actual bill numbers where it will be listed who the co-sponsors already are. That's really useful to see where your legislators stand. If you are in Massachusetts, you can ask your own legislators to co-sponsor the bill. If you can also ask them to co-sponsor other workers' rights bills. There may be actions on here where, I know, I'm pretty sure Rhode Island has one where you do not have to be in the state in order to take that action. Right here, you can email the House Labor Committee members to ask them to read the bill favorably out of committee. And I'm going to show you what these efforts look like in the system or the tool we're using called Action Network. So say we live in Massachusetts. It'll take a second. My computer's a little bit slow here. It's going to bring up a form, a template form where you don't have to know anything. If you've never taken a political action before, you don't have to know who your state legislators are, anything. So I'm going to put in my name right here. I'm going to put in my email address. I'm just going to put in a street address. And my zip code. Okay. Then I'm going to say I want to start writing. It's going to give me the next step here, or the next level of effectiveness would actually be to delete what's in here and write your own letters. But there is a populated form letter in here. And it's going to take me separately through each of my legislators. So first my senator, then my state rep. And it actually is going to give a customized letter depending on whether they support the bill or not. So right here, Senator Jamie Eldridge, he's my state senator. I actually happen to know him, and I asked him if he would already co-sponsor the bill, and he has done that. So in the system, we're simply thanking him for his efforts. When I get onto the next one, I'm not actually going to send this letter, but it will bring up my state rep, and she has not actually co-sponsored the bill. She's a conservative, so it has language specific to what conservatives might be interested in, which is the bottom line costs, how much workplace bullying is costing us, and what we could, as much as this would also cost the state to some degree, it's overall saving the economy money, so that she'll have a targeted letter for her. And then you just hit send letter and you're done. But what you can do as the next level is to share your story or share certain facts about what's happening. So, this is in the form I just showed you, but you can email a customized letter and you can use that form. There is nothing in the email that they will receive that says it's coming from Action Network. You can also use a pre-written letter, and we have a whole bunch of topics already written out. They're actually specifically for testifying in a hearing, so they're short. They're to be read under 3 minutes. So you can, pick one of these topics. You're welcome to just copy and paste as is. You can modify it to your liking, whatever you'd like to do. So those are the first two. Um, to staffers and legislators, it matters more how many letters they receive as opposed to the contents of the letter. I'm not actually sure they read all of the letters. Um, but having some variety in case they do read them is, important. So you can also, the next level here, call your state legislators. It's a little bit more disruptive because they actually have to stop and answer the phone, and it's more of an effort on your part so that they know that you're more serious about this. You can go to the website openstates.org to just, put in your address, look up your state legislator, and it will tell you their email address, their phone number. You can also go to your own state legislature website and figure out, there should be an option to find your state legislators, but this is a pretty foolproof way. And you can just use this script. Hi, my name is blank. I live in, and you can state the name of your town. I'm calling to ask the legislator if I can set up a time to meet with them to sign on to the Dignity at Work Act. They might ask you your address. You can also just say, I'm calling to see if they'll co-sponsor. You can say, I'm calling to express my support. They likely won't ask you further information except maybe why you support the bill. You can give any reason why you support it. There is also a flyer that you can access from our website. Let me just grab this page. If you go to this tab here, click right here on the Dignity at Work Act, it's going to bring you to this page where there's a video from our president, Jerry Carbo, on more of the bill, also some talking points, and also this overview flyer down here, which is available in different languages, and the myths flyer are available to you. And here's the actual bill language. It might not be exactly what's being pushed in your state, but it's going to be extremely close. So you're welcome to pull up this flyer or this page in general and, maybe talk about some of these talking points or talk about your story in, a super summarized manner. So that's calling. And then the last two options are what we're going to talk about mostly for the rest of this workshop here. So you can meet individually, and you can also meet as a group. And if you don't know other people who've been targeted in your district, or they don't even have to necessarily be in your district, you can set up a date and time at least a couple weeks out with your state legislator, and separately with your state senator and separately with your state rep, and just email us and say, look, I have a meeting on such and such a date, such and such a time with this state legislator. Can you see if anyone would like to join me? It's especially easy if it's over Zoom, because anyone, the action or the effort required is far less than driving to the state house, especially if you live an hour or more away from the state house, and parking, and you can absolutely set up a Zoom meeting. So I'm going to take you through what that process looks like, because it is the single biggest action that we can take to move this bill forward. So the first step in this process is doing your research. You want to get a basic understanding of the topic, and you also want to know your audience. And so getting a basic understanding of the topic is in this page right here. Here's the URL. I'll get to ways that you can access this information towards the end. And then the second step is to actually schedule the meeting. That's sort of the simplest step in the process here. Third, you want to actually run the meeting. This is go time. You want to meet with your state legislator and or staffers. And we encourage you not to be disappointed if you can only get the meeting with staffers, because they are the ones who sort of steer the ship in the office. They will put issues in front of the state legislator. They funnel things. So you want to, it might actually be more productive to get in front of the staffer, because they can sometimes be the one consistency. If if a legislator comes and goes, doesn't get reelected, their staffer might stay on, and therefore you'll have some, you won't necessarily have to redo the work next session. And then lastly, you want to follow up. You want to make sure that they followed through on the promise that they made. So let's go through these step by step and see how they work here. So first is research. So you want to familiarize yourself with the bill. You want to know your bill numbers. Like I said before, you can access those through the homepage of our website. And I'm just going to click back here so you can see where I'm talking about. That was on that map. If you're clicked into one of these, the actions, the bill numbers are listed here as well. But in the little pop-up, I'm going to show you again right now as soon as this page loads. But in the pop-up, you will see what the bill numbers actually are. So right here for Massachusetts, right here, it just tells you right up front what those bill numbers are. So, and the same for Rhode Island. Again, you can go to this page to get a pretty good summary. You don't have to memorize it. You can bring the flyer with you that has, some of the, basically the same information, but you're welcome to print both of them out and just have them available to you as a kind of safety net there. And you want to also know your audience. So you want to know if they already support it. So going back into that, that pop-up, let me see here, you can actually click right on the bill number. I'm assuming this cooperates and loads quickly. It really just depends on your state, but you can see who the petitioners are. Every state legislature website works differently. You might just have to get to know your state legislature website and how it works. But this isn't being too cooperative. But if I click here on petitioners, I will get a list of all the people who have already co-sponsored the bill. Here it comes. And in which case, I mean, I've already done the work for my Senator Jamie Eldridge, but if I hadn't done that work, I would be able to see who exactly has co-sponsored this and who hasn't. Wait a more second. It's basically just going to produce a list of who's co-sponsored already. So if you go back to openstates.org, you can see, you'll know the names of who your state legislators are, and then you can look up whether they've co-sponsored or not. So are they already a co-sponsor? We've gone over that. Are they a past supporter of workplace anti-abuse legislation? That's in limited states. There is another bill called the Healthy Workplace Bill that has been introduced or is still active in Massachusetts, New York, and West Virginia. Those are the only states that would be worth seeing if your state legislator has supported them in the past or currently. Again, going on your state legislature website, looking up the bill. I don't have bill numbers for those, but you could just do some research. And then you could see if they've co-sponsored other workers' rights bills. So you could actually click on your state legislator, see what they have supported, and get a good sense of the types of bills that they support. They might be heavily into environmental legislation. They might be heavily into civil rights legislation. That would be a really good sign. You could see what types of topics they're interested in. And if they've co-sponsored other workers' rights bills, those would be things like banning non-disclosure agreements, banning abusive waivers. We actually have in our website up here in this drop down, workers' rights bills in the US. And you can get a pretty good sense of what other topics are. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but just kind of what the hot topics are. Um, and we actually encourage you to do, if you're doing the research, to add to this list. So at will employment's a big one. Having domestic violence victims as a protected class, or I should say targets of domestic violence. Medicare for all can be weaved into this by detaching our health insurance from our jobs, which might make it easier, or will make it easier, to leave a job in a lot of cases. Increasing the minimum wage, there's the Fight for 15 going on around the country. Um, One Fair Wage is a campaign. This is for tipped employees. Pay equity, the scheduling bill, which is also called the Fair Work Week bill. That's a big one going on across the country. There's all sorts of things on wage data reporting, wage theft, wage transparency, that sort of thing. Those are some kind of key things to look for when you look at your state legislator's bio. So just get to know what they already support and get a sense of where they stand. So in this whole process, your goal is to kind of move legislators along a continuum. So if they are in opposition of this bill, maybe conservatives tend to be more pro-business. They might be more likely to oppose this, although this is a bipartisan bill and our goal is to get bipartisan support. You might want to see where they do, so right here, if they're conservative and likely to oppose, can you bring facts to neutralize them? So we want to get them out of opposition and into a neutral stance where maybe they're not actively going up against it, but they're not supporting it, but at least they're not being actively against it. What opposing arguments can you counter? Can you educate them on this? Like I said, bipartisan support is important. If they're likely to be neutral, maybe they are a Democrat who tends to be sort of on the more conservative side, more of a centrist. Can you share facts and stories to get their support? If they're already a supporter, what public action could they take to champion the bill? Could they talk with colleagues? Could they record a video for social media? Could they write a letter of support to the committee head who held the hearing? So there are some different options there. Next, we're going to get into scheduling. So this is kind of the simplest part here, but it may take a few efforts to get this meeting on the books. You can email first. You can try to get it in person. They might have local office hours, or at the state house if you're near the state house. If you're not, if you're a half hour to an hour or more out, you might want to think about a Zoom meeting or a local meeting, whatever your preference is. And you can mention the bill numbers and the name of the bill, which is the Dignity at Work Act. You can also call to follow up if you don't hear back after a week or so after you sent the email. Here's a sample script. Can I basically, like the other script, they might ask you your address to just make sure you're in the district, and your goal is to get a date and time to meet with them. Okay, so now you have the meeting. Here's sort of how to prep for that. So here's what to bring with you. And you don't, if it's over Zoom, obviously you don't need to bring packets because you can just email them some of these links. And some of this information might not be available to you. So we talked about the flyer. You can definitely make a copy and paste the link into the chat. If it's over Zoom, make a few copies of this, 3 to 4 or 5 packets. If there are endorsements, whether that's from other legislators or from organizations, you can bring a list of those if it's available. If it's really new or at the beginning of the process, that probably won't be available to you. There may have been a survey done by your state team. You can bring data from that. You can bring testimony from the lead sponsors, articles. You don't have to make this too intense. You could just bring the flyer and that's it. but just anything that you think will help support what you're going to talk about. Look, next we're going to talk about who to bring with you. So there's power in numbers, but you don't have to bring an army. You could bring friends, you could bring other advocates, preferably a team of 3 to 5 people if possible. And I'm always, or not always, but I'm generally available. You can email info@dignity@workact.org with a couple weeks notice. I can be on a Zoom call with you to talk about, facts of this. I've been working on this issue for years. So you want to have preferably 2 different people. If it's just you meeting individually, you will be both of these roles. So the fact provider can be the person who facilitates the discussion. Maybe they can open with facts about the issue. This is again where this flyer comes in, or that other summary list that was on the website. And so facts about the issue, summary of the bill, that person can keep the time, take notes, and then at the end, ask for a desired action. If you have more than 2 people, you can split up some of these tasks. And then you have the storytellers. So you want 1 to 4 people to share summaries of their stories in under 5 minutes. So sticking to in under 5 minutes each. So you want to stick to the facts of what their role was, what the abuse tactics were, the outcome, the effect on them, and why they want the Dignity at Work Act to pass. One thing that actually we'll get into that in the next screen here, but really think about what ask you want. So here's sort of a rundown of how this conversation could go. I'm going to introduce yourself, say that you're there to talk about the Dignity at Work Act and what the bill number is, or you might have 2 bill numbers. You want to thank them for their support of any workers' rights bills that they currently support, and be specific, show them that you're sincere about that thank, or whatever it is that you want to thank them for. You want to make this a positive conversation. Get them find some common ground initially, and then you want to explain what the bill does and why they should support it, or remind them that they've supported workplace anti-abuse legislation in the past. Again, getting back to that flyer as a summary, or that webpage as a summary. And then you want to get really clear on what it is that you ask of them. Will they co-sponsor the bill as kind of a bare minimum? I mean, it's not exactly a binding thing. It doesn't affect how they'll vote necessarily, but it does get momentum and show support. You might want to ask them to submit testimony for a hearing. If you have a hearing coming up, you might want to ask them to write to the committee chair that held the hearing in support of the bill. You might want to encourage them to ask their colleagues to co-sponsor the bill. And lastly, another option is to publicly champion the bill in some way, whether that's a video for social media that you can share, a letter to the editor, that sort of thing. Now, oftentimes, legislators are asked to sort of ride this line between supporting what leadership wants. In some states, that could mean holding on to a promotion because they're the head of a committee and that brings them more money. In other states, that's not the setup. But there can be reasons to align with leadership for their own agenda, or but their constituents are the ones who elect them. Now, most people aren't up on what's happening at their state house, and you can do what you can to educate them on related issues, but they will often give bogus excuses. And this is not to, you don't want to use this as a way to declare war on them, but you can call these things out politely. So these again come from Progressive Mass, and I'm just going to go through these quickly. So first is lack of knowledge. They might say something like, I'm not familiar with this issue, but you giving them information can help correct that. They might say that they lack expertise or focus. They might say, my expertise is this issue and I only focus on that. Or there are thousands of bills, I can't possibly read or co-sponsor all of them. But you can remind them they represent you and other community members and communicate why this issue of workplace abuse matters to you. It could be lack of pressure. People aren't calling me about this or they don't care about it. You are proof that that's not correct. You can also get more people to contact them. Legislators tend to think that their districts are more conservative than they really are. So the more people you can get to contact them when they're using this as an excuse, the better. There might be lack of popular support. My district is very conservative. Again, get more people to contact them to correct that. It could be lack of will. I don't sign on to things, or if I take a public position, it harms my ability to negotiate. So you could, just remind them that signing on to things helps to shape negotiations, and sitting on the sidelines reduces a legislator's bargaining power. They could say that there's a lack of understanding politics. You don't need to bother me, spend time on others. But just remind yourself that it's about moving everyone along the continuum. Maybe remind them that you're looking for their support or you're looking for them to take further action. It's not just about convincing naysayers. It could be a lack of independence. They might ask, what does leadership think? Which, what I just explained. But their job isn't to do what higher ranking people tell them to do. They report to constituents. And then lastly, a lack of time. We have other priorities. I'm busy with them. Again, it's about moving everyone along the continuum. If they're, if that kind of denotes that they're in a neutral position about the bill where they might vote positively on it, but they're not going to champion it. Maybe it's just asking them to do something, to post about it on social media, to see if you can post about it, having their support. Figure out what that ask is and then ask them. And that's the biggest part there. You want to have an ask. If without that ask, you're not going to create momentum and create change. Lastly, there's the follow-up. So you want to make sure they do what they say they're going to do. You want to stay connected with their team to make sure that they follow through on their promises. If they show public support, you can amplify that by sharing it on social media. And then you want to get others in your district to also call and email in support of the bill. Like I said earlier, experts say that just 3 to 5 people contacting their state legislators on an issue is enough to get it on their radar. And hopefully that will prompt them to take action. If you have any questions on this, like I said, if you aren't in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, and you would like to take action in your state, you can email us, if we can get to the next screen here, at info@dignityattworkact.org. Also in the description for this video, I'm gonna put a link to a worksheet that we have to go along with this. It goes through all of the information that we just covered in a few pages. And it gives you some space to write out some of these thoughts. So here's where we get into the worksheet aspect of it, of, checking off things, taking some notes here. Are they a co-sponsor or not? What bills have they supported? You can print this out, use the back of the paper if you need more space, or just, copy and paste this into a Word document and fill it out, that sort of thing. But here's pretty much everything that you need to know from the presentation in a 6-page document, or 5-page. So that is it. If you have any questions, please let us know. And we would love your support. This is going to require a movement to get some traction on this issue. If we look at history, even getting sexual harassment law or women's suffrage or the Civil Rights Act to address mostly racial discrimination, none of these things happened without a huge mass of people speaking up. And obviously there's a lot of fear around this issue, but these are direct things that you can do behind the scenes that will have the most impact. So again, reach out with any questions, reach out if you want to introduce this in your state or get involved in your state if there's already an existing state team at info@dignityattworkact.org. And thanks so much for your time.